Straight ahead on tonight's This Week in Politics.
Democrats have waited for months for our Senate colleagues to get our Senate Republican colleagues to get serious about helping the American people who have suffered so much during this pandemic.
As the United States tops 4 million confirmed cases of COVID-19, there are stirrings now in Washington about another coronavirus economic relief package and what it should include.
I think we want to make sure that the investments we make are going to help to keep this country safe, are going to help to keep the economy rolling and allow it to recover, and not make the deficit and debt problem any worse than it already is.
With COVID-19 cases again climbing in many areas of the country, a new public proclamation from the president.
I have no problem with the masks. I view it this way. Anything that potentially can help, and that certainly can potentially help, is a good thing. I have no problem. I carry it. I wear it. You saw me wearing it a number of times, and I'll continue.
The president taking a new solid stance on face masks. The president this week tweeting a photo of himself with a face covering, encouraging others to wear one as well. We've got a lot of ground to cover tonight. Good evening, everyone. I'm Brian Allen. The amount of any new COVID-19 relief package remains at $1 trillion. But as to what that money is going to be earmarked for remains up for debate.
Looks like another round of direct checks to most American adults. That will be means tested, probably in the $1,200 area again. Looks like we're looking at $105 billion for schools so that that will help to offset the additional expense they're going to have as they get ready to reopen in the fall.
Enabling Americans to return to work is key to our economic recovery. Currently, there are more than 17 million unemployed Americans. While this is a significant improvement from where we were 2 months ago, that number is still much too high. And we have to do everything we can to get these Americans back on the job and receiving a regular paycheck. That's why the legislation we're drafting will provide incentives for businesses to hire and to retain workers.
In addition to those ideas, in this election year, there are concerns about the pandemic curtailing voter turnout for the upcoming November general election. Here's Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar.
We need the funding in this HEROES Act to help people vote. I would rather be putting ballots in a mailbox than people in the hospital. That's a choice we have for so many voters, and that's why you see overwhelming support for getting funding, and something I believe that we can get done on a bipartisan basis.
With Democrats controlling the House and Republicans controlling the Senate, the negotiations over the next stimulus package may be tumultuous. But add to that an increasing disagreement over something the president wants in a new deal that Senate Republicans apparently do not support. Here's Nadia Romero.
Our nation stands at a crucial midway point in our battle against this terrible virus.
It's not just coronavirus Senate Republicans are battling, but also the White House.
It's hard to negotiate when the president says one thing, Senate Republicans say another, and many of them are divided.
Divided over what should and shouldn't be in the next round of COVID relief legislation. Senate Republicans are focused on three main goals:
kids, jobs, and health care.
Included in the roughly $1 trillion plan is funding to safely reopen schools, tax credits and incentives to businesses, and stimulus checks to Americans.
Direct payments to help American families keep driving our national comeback.
One thing the majority leader didn't mention is a priority for the president.
The president was very clear that he would like to see a payroll tax in there.
But it's something many Republican senators are against.
There are some differences of opinion on the question of the payroll tax cut and whether that's the best way to go.
As the Trump administration and Senate Republicans work towards a deal, Democrats wait in the wings.
Let's get going. It's over 60 days since the House passed the HEROES Act, which is a strong, bold, and comprehensive proposal.
The legislation is expected to be the second largest economic rescue package in U.S. history, second only to the first measure passed earlier this year. But before Americans receive much-needed aid, Democrats, Republicans, and the White House must compromise. At the White House, I'm Nadia Romero.
South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem is doing what she can to help boost the state economy that's taken a hit from COVID-19 by proclaiming that South Dakota is open for business. While the pandemic has challenged businesses this year, those in South Dakota are beginning to bounce back. And that has caught the attention of businesses in neighboring states. Jeff Griffin with the Sioux Falls Area Chamber of Commerce says there are a lot of businesses looking to relocate to the Mount Rushmore state.
Folks are frustrated in some of the states that are having more stringent shutdowns, and I think South Dakota has a luxury because by our very nature we have a little more social distance from one another than some of the larger cities are met with. But big city problems are something some folks are looking to avoid and get away from.
This weekend, a mask mandate went into effect in the state of Minnesota. Governor Walz signing an executive order requiring people to wear a face covering in all indoor public settings. People with a medical condition, mental health condition, or disability that makes it unreasonable to maintain a face covering are exempt, as are children 5 and under. Walz says there is no better way to demonstrate Minnesota values than by wearing a mask.
If we can get a 90 to 95% compliance, which we've seen the science shows, we can reduce the infection rates dramatically, which slows that spread and breaks that chain. And this is the way, the cheapest, the most effective way for us to open up our businesses, for us to get our kids back in school, for us to keep our grandparents healthy, and for us to get back that life that we all miss so much.
Violating the order is a misdemeanor and could carry a fine of up to $100. So far, 30 states have a similar mandate when it comes to masks. Iowa City, Iowa, the home of the University of Iowa, now also has a mask mandate in place. But it defies the will of Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds, who says local authorities have no authority to implement a mask mandate. But Iowa City Mayor Bruce Teague says he is allowed to put the mandate into place because of what he says is an impending emergency. 30,000 University of Iowa students will be returning to the city in August, and he says action needs to be taken now to get COVID-19 case numbers in the area down.
By wearing a face mask, you are showing your fellow residents that you care about them. If we comply with this order, Iowa City will see the difference.
As part of the order, businesses must post signs at entrances instructing customers to wear those masks. Violations could result in citations. The order is in effect for now until September 15th. The debate continues tonight about classes this coming fall and whether students should be in the classroom or at home. School is set to begin here in Sioux Falls in just under 5 weeks. Nick Jackson is a 5th grade teacher at Garfield Elementary. He has created a change.org petition. He believes there should be remote learning until Sioux Falls goes at least 2 weeks with no new COVID-19 cases. He would also like to see masks required when everyone does return to school.
The biggest concern is it's a life and death situation. Feeling like schools are kind of being treated as an experiment right now where, we're not sure what's going to happen, but let's try these things out, and I'm not okay with that.
At last check, the petition has more than 3,000 signatures. As the president calls for the resumption of in-person learning this fall, this past week he made the decision to cancel Republican National Convention activities in August in Jacksonville, Florida, because of COVID-19 concerns.
But we won't do a big crowded convention per se. It's just not the right time for that. I care deeply about the people of Florida and everywhere else, frankly, in this country and even in the world, who would be coming into the state, and I don't want to do anything to upset it. They'll be doing very well very shortly.
When This Week in Politics continues here on KSFY, Mayor Tenhagen discusses budget priorities in the city, and Minnesota lawmakers make a crucial decision on policing reform in the state. We will be right back with all that here on KSFY. And welcome back to This Week in Politics here on KSFY. A body camera for every police officer in Sioux Falls. That is among the public safety goals Mayor Paul Tenhagen laid out this week in his 2021 budget proposal. About 60% of the $593 million budget focuses on areas like wastewater treatment, streets and highways, and public safety and health. The budget also earmarks funding for 15 personnel for the city's new fire station in southeastern Sioux Falls, as well as 5 new police officer positions. Meantime, $400,000 is dedicated to 150 more body cameras for the police department.
This will allow each uniformed patrol officer to have a body camera. These cameras will record our officers' interactions while carrying out their duties and will help our police force better serve and protect this community.
There is concern tonight that the mayor's budget cut funding for the Sioux Falls Municipal Band. The 2021 budget proposal will go before the City Council for approval this September. Lawmakers in Minnesota have made history after passing a police reform bill. This comes less than 2 months after the George Floyd killing in Minneapolis, which sparked global protests. The Minnesota State House passed the measure first, followed by the state Senate just 2 hours later. This package includes a ban on chokeholds, more training on autism, crisis intervention, as well as cultural bias. There is also a provision to incentivize police officers to live in the communities where they work, as well as a community panel to make the arbitration process more accountable to the public.
It sets the groundwork for the work that we know needs to continue after this. The conversation cannot and will not end there with the passage of this bill, because there's a lot of work that will be required to protect black bodies.
15 provisions, members, are in this bill. 15. In a special session, 15 provisions is amazing. Do we think it's the end of it? No. There was a number of provisions that we just said, these need to be vetted in a hearing, in a regular session where you can have a lot more voices. That was something we all wanted, but we sensed the urgency of doing something.
One of those regular session items could involve penalties for police. Minnesota police officers will also now have a duty to intervene if they see a fellow officer doing something illegal. When This Week in Politics continues here on KSFY, remembering Congressman John Lewis. And welcome back to This Week in Politics here on KSFY. Georgia Congressman John Lewis died last weekend at the age of 80. Lewis was a civil rights icon, a leader of the 1960s civil rights movement, right alongside Martin Luther King Jr. He was there in 1965, marching across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama, where he was met by state and local police officers, and they had clubs. Lewis sustained a skull fracture. In November of 2019, Georgia United States Senator Johnny Isakson, a Republican, was preparing to resign his post due to health reasons. Isakson served in the U.S. House as part of his 20-year career in Washington. Isakson wanted to say goodbye to his friend John Lewis, but had trouble walking across the House floor. This is what happened next.
I will come over and meet you, brother.
As C-SPAN cameras rolled, John Lewis left his seat in the U.S. House chambers and walked across the aisle onto the Republican side of the chamber, where Isakson was trying to get to him. Once there, the two men embraced. Reporters in the chamber at the time said you could hear a pin drop at the time it happened. After that, Isakson sat down, and Lewis sat right next to him in a sign of respect for someone on the other side of the political spectrum. That's it for This Week in Politics on this Sunday night. I'm Brian Allen. Thank you for making some time for us this evening. We'll be back next Sunday night at 10:30, and we hope you can join us as well. As always, from all of us to all of you, good night.